Has Newcastle CEO David Hopkinson confirmed that Newcastle will be staying at St James's Park? How's it, everybody? Welcome back to Me the Fontainer. David Hopkinson did an interview yesterday on TalkSport with Jim White. Jim White asked him a couple of questions, and there were some really telling revelations which came out of that interview about the stadium expansion at Newcastle. Why is this important? Why should you care? Why do I care? Why is this relevant? Stadium expansion is all linked to revenue. Newcastle's revenue is around the 320 million pound a year mark. If you're looking at the bigger clubs in the Premier League, they're more than double that. City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, for example, all way past the 500 million pound mark. Why is it relevant? Why does it matter? Well, with more money, it means you can have more money to buy transfers. But probably more importantly, or as important, is that you can offer players more wages. Let's think about Brian Mbeumo, who chose between Newcastle and Man United. Forget about the history of the club, or forget about a bigger club. It's all about the dollar, the pound note, the kwan, the chaleta. Call it whatever you want to call it. How much money do you have in your bank balance, and who can afford to pay you the most? That was a huge factor in the Alexander Isak situation in the summer, about him being promised a pay increase and he didn't get a pay increase, and that's why he sat and threw his toys out the cot. Revenue is sorted in three ways: match day revenue, commercial revenue, transfer income, and broadcast revenue. Now, what we're talking about here is the stadium revenue, St James's Park. This has been the hot top. It's something which I am really passionate about. It frustrates the hell out of me that Newcastle fans and the board and everyone complains that we can't compete and PSR is a problem and it's hampering us and there's restrictions, when there is a glaringly obvious answer staring us straight in the face and has been staring us in the face since PIF took over the club. There's been an answer to the solution. Get the stadium increased. St James's Park's capacity is just over 52,000. There is a huge debate whether we should or could increase that to 60,000, 65, 70. Some people are saying 80, 90, 100. I think that's probably too much. I think that range between 68 and 78 would be absolutely on the sweet spot. But why is this important? Why do we just want to put extra bums on seats inside a stadium? Well, it is directly linked to revenue. With higher revenue and match day revenue, that is ticket sales, that is hospitality sales, that's us buying beers and burgers at half time and before the game and after the game, and programs, etc. It all comes down to revenue. With higher revenue, you can pay higher salaries, therefore keep your stars at the club and give them a salary at the club which stops them looking over at other clubs thinking I could be earning double or triple or quadruple my salary. We know the highest earner at the club is Bruno, is about 165. Haaland is on 500. There's a huge disparity between what Erling Haaland is being paid and what Guimaraes is being paid. He's being paid a third of what Haaland is earning at Man City. Is he a third of the player? No, he's not. But it's what the club can afford to pay. So David Hopkinson was asked about the stadium question, whether St James's Park is going to get a refurb or whether we should be looking at a new stadium somewhere else. His response to this was, the truth is we haven't decided. St James's is the magical place. We know that. Blah, 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 blah. It's going to be an extraordinary place on Saturday. Okay, we know that. Now, this is one of the things with David Hopkinson is he speaks really well. Now, when he's saying these things and he's not answering the direct question, he's in the back of his mind saying one word and he's thinking about how best to answer the question without ruffling any feathers, without people like me and you picking holes in it. But he did give some very informative information away. He said, it's 53,000, as I just said. We think we could be bigger, and that, of course, is revenue, a major investment. You've got to spend money to make money. We haven't made a final decision on what we're going to do here. We are working on this every day, deciding whether it's here or a new site, whether it's a renovation or a new stadium. But we've got an opportunity we're pursuing, and we're working every day. Now, that is the first telltale sign. So we have an opportunity. That's interesting that he didn't say we have opportunities. To me, this means that they've got an idea on exactly what they want to do. I was always in the camp of thinking a brand new stadium. When I listened to this interview, I walked away thinking they might renovate St James's Park. So if they were to renovate St James's Park, how large could that expansion be? Hopkinson believes at least 10,000 more seats can be created, so from 52 to 62,000. He said all of our modelling and all of the capacity starts in the 65 to 68,000 range. I don't think bigger than that is good, but we also want to think if we do something, it's material and significant. So he's saying he doesn't think anything bigger than 68,000 seats. That is quite interesting. I always thought that 70,000 is the magical number. Now, this might be him trying to justify or start to plant a seed in terms of where we think we're going to go. Why would you build a brand new stadium, a 68,000 seater, when basically you can just put 10 more thousand seats at St. James's Park? What is the point in that? Renovating your existing stadium for 10 extra thousand seats, or building a brand new state-of-the-art stadium for the next 200 years for 15,000 extra seats? It just doesn't make any sense. He also did confirm that the location of the stadium needs to be in the city centre. So to me, that rules out a brand new stadium offsite somewhere. It leaves us with two options. Let's be honest, everybody. Either St. James's Park is going to get renovated, or they're going to build a new stadium in Leazes Park. I was always a fan of the idea of building a new stadium at Leazes Park, but the land on which that has got so much red tape and there's biodiversity issues. But to me, it's the cleanest way to do it. I don't see how you can renovate St. James's Park when we've got Euro 2028 in 2 years' time. That means nothing's going to happen to St. James's Park for the next 2 years. I don't think St. James's Park is set up in the way that Etihad or Anfield was, where you can do construction behind a main stand during the season and then do most of your work in the summer. Any work at St. James's Park is going to mean that you're going to have to close off and partition an element of the stadium. Now, if you are partitioning an element of the stadium during the season, you are losing out on revenue. We are already complaining and bitching about PSR and not having enough revenue. Now, matchday revenue is not the be-all and end-all. Newcastle are currently raking in around £50 million a season on the matchday revenue. That's just in the Premier League. Obviously, you add Champions League and Cup games on that, and the ticket price is obviously way more expensive, as we saw with the Barcelona debacle earlier in the season. That obviously makes that number go up. But the likes of Tottenham and Liverpool and Arsenal are all double that. The frustrating thing here is that, Newcastle was bought 4 years ago. David Hopkinson has only been here for 5 months, right? Look, it's not all on him. He's the CEO. But also don't forget, it's not his decision on what we do. He gets all the data, gets all the recommendations, puts it into one executive summary and pitches it to the owners of the club. The owners are the ones who make the decision. David Hopkinson is the day-to-day face of the club. So fundamentally, he's not paying for it out of his pockets. He's the one who's got to assess and make a recommendation. They just seem to be dragging their heels on this one. I mean, come on, guys. You're saying you're working on it every day. I think we need a little bit more than this, not some cryptic messages. And, everyone knew 2-3 years ago that you can get 10,000 seats in St. James's Park. You say you've been working on that every day. I could have told you that on day one. Whilst we're talking about information or lack of data, anybody who's watched my channel before knows that I was always banging on about Newcastle's official club website that still said that David Hopkinson was not the CEO of Newcastle. It had a picture of David Hopkinson, and underneath it said Darren Eales was still the CEO. We know that Darren Eales left in September 25 and Hopkinson came in September 25. So it's been 5 months that website has been out of date. I personally emailed the club and have been telling them about this, and today, for the first time on the 5th of February, they have updated, the website. So now officially on the club's website, it says that David Hopkinson is the CEO. To explain my rant and why I think this is important, imagine the company that you work for had a picture of the new CEO or general manager or owner, and the name underneath was the previous GEM or owner or manager. Imagine if you own something, if you have your own business, and it had somebody else's name on it. Attention to detail. That just didn't give me a lot of hope that the club were really, really looking at the finer detail. He himself obviously is not going on the website, because if I saw that at my company, that would be changed immediately. Let's move on to what he was talking about with regards to the ambition of the club. Now, they asked him about the ambition. He said, the number one thing I talk to the club about is ambition. That's the magic word here. We all have total alignment on that. This is a club that by 2030, in 5 years' time, will be consistently contending at the top prizes in global football. Now, that's not Premier League, right? That's Champions League, because Premier League's local, Champions League's European/global. We have total alignment on that. We have a lot of wood to chop between here and there. When I see Newcastle United, everywhere I look, I see opportunity. It's my job to help the club unlock that and deliver that. My job is getting a bigger bag of money and invest that with Ross appropriately to give Eddie Howe or whoever the manager is the most success on the pitch. Finances and revenue and stadiums is one thing. PSR has put a cap and put a lid on us. Fine, it is what it is. Next year's squad cost ratio is putting a cap on us. If you didn't know as well, competing in Europe means that you have a more stringent, tougher squad cost ratio. This season we have to comply with UEFA's financial regulation. If you want more information on that, click on my video over here. I'll go into all the detail in terms of the percentages, etc. I think David Hopkinson was saying all the right things. Now, he obviously comes across really well. He's a Canadian. He's obviously very charming. He's got a lot of charisma. Doesn't always exactly hit the nail on the head. Is not going to make front page news. But what I was thinking about this topic and ambition is, from his point of view, it's very, very easy for him to go to the ownership and say, when he was pitching for the job, I'm going to get Newcastle to the top of the Premier League and competing at the top of the Champions League, semi-finals, etc. in the next 5 years. And then they're going, well, how are you going to do that? And he's going to go, well, because I did it in Toronto, I did it in Madrid, blah, 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 blah. So I can do it here. Those skills are transferable. And they go, oh, well, here you go, here's the job. There's still no accountability for it. What happens to him if we don't reach that goal in 5 years? Nothing. He either gets sacked or he walks away with a golden handshake. You know, it's very easy and pie in the sky to say something. Now I get having a goal, I want to lose so much weight, or I want to run so many miles, or I want to save so much in the bank. It's great and it's really, really good having a goal. If it's realistic or unrealistic, could be argued and debated, but first and foremost, put a mark on the page and say, that's where we want to go to. I'm all in favor of that. But what I do disagree with is the accountability. If we're saying we're going to get there, and he's saying that there's kind of milestones in between, what are those milestones? Does that mean that we need to get into Europe every season? If we don't get into Europe every season, who's accountable? Is he? Is Ross Wilson? Is Eddie Howe? Is a player? Is it the coaching staff? Is it us, the fans? Are we going to get hit with higher ticket prices? Where does the accountability sit? For him to have the ambition, he also has to have some realistic measurements in terms of what is expected by whom at what stage. Now, the club and the ownership and the stadium and the training ground, for me, is one of the most frustrating things, because there is no cap. There is no limit on PSR or the restrictions. It's something we could have done last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But we're still going to talk about it in interviews and say we haven't made our mind up yet. A perfect example of this is the training ground, right? Newcastle's training ground in Benton is an absolute disgrace. He called it a 7 out of 10. It's not a 7 out of 10. It's a 3 out of 10 for Premier League standards. Come on, let's be honest, guys. So there was a bit of leaked news that apparently we're spending £200 million on the state of the art. Then there was some news before that we're spending 20 million on our current facilities. Why are we spending 20 million on our current facilities when you are going to spend 200 million, apparently, which still hasn't been confirmed yet, on a new stadium? The only reason you'll be spending 20 million on your current facilities, in my opinion, is because you think you're going to stay there for a long period of time. It absolutely boggles my mind why Newcastle can't do these things in the background, which are quick and easy but expensive wins. And you don't need to ask the Premier League's permission to do this. And to finish it up, we just need to summarize what he said about having money to spend in the winter transfer window. He said that Ross Wilson, the sporting director, was the first and the last phone call that he made every day during the window. He says that there was money to spend in the press match conference before the Man City game. Eddie Howe said that there wasn't enough money to spend to bring in the right types of recruits. Now, which one was it? Was it that we had money to spend, but how much money did we spend? £1, £1 million, 20, 50? Or was it that Eddie Howe thought, ooh, the player that I actually want is going to cost 60 million? And then David Hopkinson and Ross says, well, no, we don't have 60 million. And Eddie's saying, well, if you don't get 60 million, it's not going to make the squad better. And then they go, well, fine, then you can't have any 60 million because we're going to save that for the summer. So there does seem to be this kind of disconnect where both of them are saying the truth, but both of them are lying at the same time, if that makes any sense. So just saying there's money to spend, they're never going to tell us exactly how much we have. That's not the way football works. But we saw last night from the Man City game, and we've seen over the last couple of months that the squad is running on fumes. I'm not going to go into the Man City game. Our Carabao Cup defense is over. I'm going to say it now. The FA Cup against Aston Villa, play the youngsters, play a reserve team, focus on the Champions League versus Carabao. We know we're going to face Barcelona or Chelsea afterwards, focus on that game, and then focus on getting as close or as high in that Premier League table as we can. We preserve the players. Don't focus on the FA Cup, please. I love the Cup. I love the history of the Cup since I was a boy. It's a really, really important competition. But from Newcastle's point of view, we just don't have the squad. Thanks for watching. I'd really appreciate it if you can give us a like, a subscribe, and don't forget,